Welcome back, everyone. In the prior episode, we looked at setting up a symbol list for our workflow process. And in this particular episode, we're now going to look at the very first step of the workflow process where we are undertaking substantial optimizations over the systems that Fred has developed and is available to us to use for our trend following systems. So to understand this process, we need to see which of the algorithms we're going to be deploying in this particular step of the process. So if we go to our strategy tester module and we drop down our strategy tester for ATS24, the particular algorithms we're going to be using for this particular episode is ATS24 BBB, or the Bollinger Band Breakout, ATS24 BBR, Bollinger Band Retracement into Trend, the ATS24 box trader, which is a Davis box, congestion box breakout trader, which looks at applying breakouts over periods of congestion. We're also going to be looking at the Donchian breakout technique, which is a very common trend following method deployed by the turtle traders. We're going to be looking at the moving average crossover, the MAT process, moving average crossover process, which is a very simple trend following model. And we're going to be looking at the regression line trader, or a standard deviation channel regression breakout trader. These particular 6 models have been developed by Fred, and for more information on these models, we advise you refer to our forum. So I'll show you where to find this information. You go to your forum and in the forum, you scroll down to videos, and then if you go into episode 3 and you go to the very first post of that particular thread, if you step through the video here, the YouTube video, we go into significant detail about what each of these different systems seek to achieve. So these particular 6 systems we're using as 6 simple trend following models to then run substantial optimizations over. So to actually commence this process, the first thing we need to do is set up the parameter values that we want to optimize over for each of these models. So let's step through each of the algorithms, and we'll start with the Bollinger Band Breakout algorithm. You click on this, and then we go into, we also tick off optimization here, and we go into expert properties. So once we've clicked on expert properties and we've now got the expert property listing come up, the first thing we do is we go to the testing tab here, and we apply $1 million for this particular stage of the process, USD dollars, long and short, balance, and genetic algorithm turned off. Then we go to the input screen, and I'll step you through these inputs. The first thing you've got to do is put the password in this area here, which is available from the manual that you can access for ATS24. These 3 areas here allow you to set different risk configurations for your trader. But for this particular first step of the process, we advise you don't use the percentage risk per trade or the lots per trade, and we use this function here, which is the dollar risk per trade. Now in our tester, we applied $1 million. So for per trade, we're applying $500 per trade for this particular test across all of the different systems. This normalizes the process across all of our systems and across all of our markets. So we'll apply $500 here. Now, what we'll notice when we look down the left-hand side of this input screen, we notice that there are a couple of areas that are ticked. In this case, for the BBB, or the Bollinger Band Breakout, we've got 4 areas ticked. The stop loss in ATR multiples, the trailing stop loss in ATR multiples, the Bollinger period, and the Bollinger deviation. When we tick these boxes here, these are the particular variables we're going to be optimizing over. Notice the other variables have been unticked. That means we're not going to be undertaking optimizations over those particular variables. So when we are not undertaking optimization of the unticked variables, it's deploying the value that's contained in this value column. So for instance, if we're applying $500 risk, and we notice in the value column it's 500 here, this is the value that will be applied to our models. If we come to the ATR period, which is unchecked, in other words, we're not optimizing over the ATR period, but of course you're welcome to do so if you want to. When you notice we're applying a standard 25 period ATR for this particular model, and that's a 25 period on a D1, so that's the last 25 days. It's looking at the volatility over those last 25 days to determine the ATR. But what we are optimizing on is the stop loss. So when we tick the box on the left-hand side, we then need to deploy the start, step, and stop functions of this particular screen here. So what we're doing is, because we're optimizing on the stop loss setting in ATR multiples, we start with a test from a start point of 1 up to a maximum ATR multiple of 8 with a step of 0.5. That's going to give us a large number of possible permutations where it goes 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, etc., right through the whole process, optimizing for the ATR multiple applied to the stop. The same thing for the trailing stop. We start with a ATR multiple of 1 up to an ATR multiple of 10 in this instance with a step of 0.5. You're free to choose whatever ranges you want here. This is just the guidance that we're giving you from the particular settings that I'm using, but you might want to test other settings. For the trail, we can either apply a continuous trail or a step trail. We can optimize over that if we want to, but in this instance, I'm using a step trail. That's my preferred method of trail. For the break-even setting, we can apply this if we want to apply a when price reaches a particular ATR level in profit, we can lift the stop to a break-even position if we apply this. We don't, but the option's there if you wish to have a break-even condition in your stop mechanics. In this particular row here, we have the options of either testing just long trades, just short trades, or both long and short trades. For our particular processes, we select both long and short. So in that instance, we select 0 for both long and short. For the maximum number of trades, long or short, for each of our systems, we set this as at 1, which means that we can never only have one trade at a time. But for the box trader, you might use different values for this. For instance, we can apply values up to 5 for the box trader to allow us to have 5 particular entries active at any particular point in time. With the box trader, it's a congestion box trader where you might need multiple entries to actually be able to achieve that signal. And so for the box trader, for instance, we might have a setting of 5 here for that value there. For the fade position allows us to take the opposite direction to the trend entry on a particular signal. This is only for those that wish to trade counter trend or mean revert into the signal. We tend to not use this feature, even though it's there for you to apply if you want. Just set it to true if you wanted to fade the position. But we set it to false, so it takes the trend following signal. The adjust profit for last bar, what this means is that when you undertake a typical backtest process in MT4, when you reach the very last date of the range of your testing, it typically realizes all of the profit of those trades at that particular point in time. But in reality, when you're trading live or in demo account, at that particular point in time, those trades will still be left open. So this gives us the ability, if we set it to true, to more realistically display how we would, what the positions would be at the end of the period for that particular process. I set it to false because I like for my backtest process for all my trades to be realized, but you might set it to true if you wish to more realistically assess where the actual final trades ended up without being closed out at the end of the process. The only used closed trades and realized balance is for the generation of the equity curves at the end of this process. So this process actually evaluates the performance of each of these optimization runs on using the equity position. But if you set this to true, that will only use the closed balance position. It's up to you whether you use it or not. I set it to false for my particular runs. We want to optimize over the Bollinger period, so I'm optimizing from a start of 50 up to a maximum of 250 for the Bollinger period with a step of 50. The Bollinger deviation, I start with a 1 standard deviation range in my Bollinger channel up to a 3 standard deviation range with a step of 0.5. The trend moving average period, that is the middle line of the Bollinger Band signal, and that is typically a moving average, and you can optimize over that if you want, but we've set it at 200. So it's a 200 SMA as our trend moving average period, which is the center line of the Bollinger channel. That's it for the BBB. So before I leave on the BBB, once I've set up all of the parameters and put my password in and I'm happy with the range that I want to test the optimizations over, I now want to save this set file. So you save it, but you give it the name of the algorithm. So the way we'd save this is we'd save it, and when giving it a name, we give it ATS24 underscore ST1 underscore BBB dot set. Now, this is because we've got to use the correct nomenclature for the set files, because with this process, the computer is automatically looking to this specific nomenclature to apply those settings that we've set up in this set file. So make sure you use the correct nomenclature in saving this as a set file. Once we've saved this as the set file for the BBB, we close out of that and we go into the next algorithm, which is the BBR. So in the BBR, we select that, and now once again we need to set the expert properties for this optimization run. So when we get to the input tab screen, we've gone through all of these features, which is standard for all of our particular models, but some of the systems have their own particular parameters. So for the Bollinger Band retracement, we want to do an optimization over the stop loss, the trailing stop, the Bollinger period, and the Bollinger deviation in a similar way that we did it with the BBB system. Once that has been set up, make sure that your testing tab here is set on $1 million USD long and short balance genetic algorithm turned off. Now that's all set up in accordance with the password put in here. Now you want to save this as a set file, give it the name ATS24 underscore ST1 underscore BBR dot set. That then saves that as that set file. Let's go to the next system. The box will now open up expert properties. So here we are with the box. All of the settings are very similar, except in this case, we're optimizing over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables instead of 4. So this means that the optimization run is going to take longer than the others. But with this particular optimization run, we are optimizing for the stop loss, the trailing stop loss, the maximum number of trades, long or short. In this instance, I start with a setting of 1. I'll change this to a setting of 5. Actually, I'll change this for a setting of 8. And with an increment of 1. This is therefore going to test multiple signals on the box trader. And this is because when we're undertaking the box trader, often we get false breakouts with the congestion box breaking out of that position, and we want to have multiple bites at the cherry. So this allows us to test over having 1 test per signal and ultimately increasing the number of tests we have for the signal up to a maximum of 8 trades active for that signal. The box length and the box range, we apply these settings here. The set files we'll have in the forum for under this particular video, and you can look at this. So we're looking at the difference in the box length from a 10 period box up to a 50 period box with a step of 10, and we're looking at a box range in ATRs from a start of 3 ATRs, the volatility within the box, up to 6 ATRs, the volatility within the box there, with a step of 1. Now we've set that up, we've now got to save this as a set file for the box. So we use ATS24 underscore stage 1 underscore box dot set. Now that's done and we've saved it as a set file. We now go to the next system, which is the Donchian breakout system. Go to the expert properties. Similar to what we've gone through before, the things we're testing on for the optimization is the stop loss, the trailing stop, and simply the Donchian period. This will have the fewest number of runs because it's only looking at 3 variables to optimize over. The Donchian period, we see we have a start period for our Donchian of 50 up to 800, very long-term Donchian period with steps at 25. Once this is done, we save this as ATS24 underscore stage 1 underscore don.set, and that saves that set file for reference by the system as it's going through the process. Now we go to the moving average crossover system, and we'll go into the expert properties. Similar process, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 variables to optimize over in this instance. Of course, you can choose whatever variables you like to optimize over, but these are the core ones that we believe are important for the particular system. And in particular for this, we're looking at the moving average 1, which is a short-term moving average, and the moving average 2, which is the long-term moving average. And we set up the ranges accordingly with the start, the stop, and the step for each of those moving averages. Once that's done, we save that as the mat set file. ATS24 underscore stage 1 underscore mat.set. Now we can go to our final system, which is the regression line trader. Let's go into our expert properties. Here we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 variables to optimize over. The standard variables are stop loss and trailing stop in ATR multiples we're testing here, and we're also looking at the optimizing over the look back, where we're looking at a 50 period look back up to a 400 period look back with steps to 50, and the standard deviation, we're looking at a 1 standard deviation channel up to a 3 standard deviation channel with a step of 0.5. Once that's done, we save this as a set file, ATS24 underscore stage 1 underscore reg.set. Now that's set up all of the parameters we want to test for our data mining operations. Now we want to go to the final algorithm of this series, which is the data mining algorithm itself, and we want to open that up and set its expert properties. So we're going to do that now. Go into expert properties. So when we go into our expert properties, you'll notice in the inputs tab, we've got to do account login. That's similar to the symbol generation video that we did the other day. You've got to put your MT4 account login here, your account password for MT4, your account server, your Pepperstone server or whatever server you're using here, have got to be specified here. In this section, we have the ability to optimize a single system, 2 systems, 4 systems, 5 systems, 6 systems, whatever, for this particular stage of the workflow process. To turn off one of these systems, you just set one of these to false. However, in this instance, we want to test all of these systems to have a big suite of different systems that we can compile a portfolio with. So I'm going to run it over all of the systems, and I've set all of the 6 systems to true here. This next section is important. This gives us the range that it's going to be doing the optimization on, from the date from and the date to. Now, don't worry if your markets that you're trading don't necessarily have this earliest origin date of 1990. They might, for instance, have an earliest origin date of 2000. What this means is that it will simply not test anything before this date. But anything from this date or after will be tested through this optimization process. So this is a fairly large optimization process we do here. So let's say we are currently now at the 25th day of June 2024. Let's say I wanted to undertake this workflow process now. I would therefore set a date range from 1990-0101 up to the end of last year, 2024-12-31. That therefore means there's going to be about 5 or 6 months of out of sample for me to have a look at, but I'm trying to use as much data as possible for this optimization run. So I'd set this to 2023 12/31, 2023 12/31, which is last year, to the end of December last year, which means that I've got about 4, 5, 6 months of out of sample with this process, but I do want to use as much data as I possibly can. In this particular row here, if we're running in portable mode, we'd set this to true, but in most of our instances, it's always false here. So once this has all been set up, go to the testing module here, make sure you've got $1 million USD long and short balance genetic algorithm turned off. Once you've set this up all correctly, you can now save this as a set file, which is ATS24_ST1_datamining.set. Save that as a set file, and then we are now ready to commence our process because we've set up all of the optimizations for our different systems, and we've set up the expert properties for our data mining process. We're now ready to run the process. So now we're ready to run the process. So to do it, we make sure we're using the data mining algorithm here. We've set up the expert properties. Now we press the start. We first check that the visual mode is turned off and optimization is also unchecked. Now we press the start button. Now this initial step of the process is going to be quite quick. What this is doing is it's creating a batch process and a large number of text files, similar to what happened in the symbol generation process. So let's go to our File, Open Data folder and see what files have been created. We go to the tester directory, we go to the files subdirectory, and you'll notice that ATS24 sim was the directory created in the last episode, creating our symbol list, which we find in here. But we'll also notice there's another folder that's now been created called ATS24. Click in that and you'll notice there's a large number of text files here in a similar way to the text files that were generated for our symbol generation process. But these text files relate to the MAT text files for each market, the DON text files for each market, the box text files for each market, the reg, regression line trader, text files for each market, the BBR, and the BBB text files. And that contains all of the parameter settings that we've set up already for each of those markets. We'll also notice that there's a file here called ATS24_stage1batch.txt. This is the one we want to do to execute the commencement of the process. So to do that, we click on this file, and the first thing we do is we change that text extension to a BAT extension. So we delete the text and type in BAT. Click outside. It says, if you change a file name extension, the file might become unusable. Are you sure you want to change it? We go, yes. Now, before we run this BAT file, once again, make sure that our MetaTrader installation is closed. So we close it like that. Now we're ready to run our batch file by clicking on the file, clicking the right-hand mouse button, selecting Run as Administrator. Now it's going to say, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? And we go, yes. Now what you find is a DOS prompt running. It's now going to be opening and closing our MetaTrader and running through the comprehensive optimization process. So it's now running the very first system, which is the Donkian system, against the first of our symbols, AUD CAD. You'll notice that it's set up the correct system name algorithm here, the correct market here. It set the spread to what our spread was in our symbol listing, and it's now running through an optimization process you can see down here, where we're now 288 optimizations through a total possible 8,835 optimizations. So when we set up our Donkian parameters, we were testing only three three options. I think we were looking at the optimization over a stop loss, the optimization over a trailing stop, and the optimization over the look back of our Donchian period 3. That means that in total, the possible number of permutations for a range of start, step, and stop values for all of those three is a total possible parameters of 8,835. That's a number you've got to remember. I'd write it down because you would expect to see the CSV files generated from this having at 8,835 rows. But anyway, the bottom line is this process is now running, and this is a very time-consuming process. Might take 2 or 3 days where you've got to leave your computer uninterrupted as it's running through this process. But you can have little sneak previews of what's being generated on the fly, provided you don't interrupt the process. So let's go to our tester directory and see what's been generated. So we'll notice in ATS24 here that the text file, these progressively reduce over the course of the process, over the 2 days, to where they all disappear and you're just left finally with a single file called the BAT file. That tells you that the process has ended. But at the moment, it's working on the first BAT file, which is the AUD-CAD BAT file for Donchian. And when we go to file directory here, you'll notice it's created a subdirectory called ATS21 Don. This is where it's saving the runs or the CSV files for each of these runs. Now you can see that this CSV file is still being created, so do not interrupt this process. Wait until you only can open up a CSV file that is fully completed. So while it is running on this process, don't open it up. But what we'll do is, as I'll come back to this once this single run has first been completed and the next run has started, we'll come back to that file and have a look at what's in it. So here we are, still in the commencement stages of this entire process for the optimization runs, but it's now run through AUD-CAD and it's now onto AUD-CHF, the second symbol in our symbol list, and it's applying the Donchian optimization process for this. So now let's go and have a look at that CSV file it created for AUD-CAD. So when we go into the tester directory and we go into files, we then go into all of the Donchian system files will be contained in this subfolder. Go into this here. You'll notice that this AUD-CHF is still in the process of being constructed. It's only 159 or 60 kilobytes big at the moment, and it's progressively increasing. But this is finished. The AUD-CAD process has been finished. Let's have a look at what it saved in that file. So we've opened up that CSV file, and we've noticed that we've got a lot of information here. We've got the symbol name, the strategy, for this is the Donchian, the magic number, the net profit, gross profit, number of trades. Real only means realized balance. If that was set to true, that means we'd have set that option for realized balance for our equity. But in this case, it's false. So I was looking at our equity position. The gross profit, number of trades for that run, the MAR ratio, serenity ratio, if you like that as a risk metric. It tells you what settings was used for that particular run, a 25 period Donchian, a 1 ATR stop loss multiple, a 1 trailing stop loss multiple. The trail type was our step trail. Break-even multiplier wasn't used. Trade direction, we were both long and short, so it was 0. Maximum number of trades for this system is 1 only at a time. We didn't have the fade option applied. We didn't adjust the last bar for this particular option, and I was using a Donchian period in this run of 50. They're the particular settings for the Donchian that are relevant. Now, what you'll also notice is if I scroll down to the entire list, I'll see that there is a total of excluding the opening bar, there's 8,835 rows. Now this agrees with the total number of optimizations that was calculated by the process. So it's important to make sure that that number is the same number that you see at the base of that screen, 8835 for that particular run for the Donkian. But the different systems, because we're optimizing differently, will have different total parameter values for that. But for the Donkian system, they should all be 8,835 in length in possible iterations. Let's go back to that file. That's it for the CSV file for the Donkian. We make sure we close that down. And so when we look at our particular process at the moment, we'll notice that the AUD CHF is still running, still building up, and we've got our AUD CAD that is finished for the Donkian. All of the files generated for the Donkian for the different markets should be about a similar size to 1230. That tells you that everything is pretty well processed completely. If they are significantly different under the same system, like Donkian, that means there might be something wrong. So check those files, make sure there's no curious values in there, those CSV files. But once you're happy with it, that's good. But you don't have to do this until the entire process is over. And what I'll do now is return to you as though I'm returning back in 2 to 3 days' time once this process is over, and show what you should expect to see. So see you then. Well, welcome back. Let's assume we've had 2 to 3 days of running this process and we've come back to our computer. We should see that the MetaTrader installation is closed, but we can still access these tester files. When we go into the tester files, if we go into the ATS24 directory that was generated, we should see that there are no text files left in here, and the only thing left is the BAT file for stage 1. All we do is we delete that BAT file for stage 1, and we're good to go. Now, let's have a look at what's been created in each of these directories for each of the different systems. So let's go into the Donkian directory, which was the first system that we tested using all of our markets from our symbol list. And when we go into Donkian, we'll see that there are 67 files in here, 67. That is our complete universe that's been tested. We'll also note that each of the file sizes is about the same size, around about 1,200 or so kilobytes. That's a good sign that the test has been fully completed. And just have a look at a few of the examples. If we go into the AUD CHF file, we should see that there is a total of 8,835 rows here. They all look pretty good to me, and it's run through the entire iteration process. Any of the files that are slightly different sizes, just cross-check them to make sure that they have processed all of the rows. This one is only 1,198 rows, so let's check this. Sorry, this has a total of still 8,835, so that's still good. It just had less kilobytes on that particular file, but it looks as though that's been processed correctly. So you'll also notice that all of these files have been labeled stage 1, stage 1. This tells us what stage of the process these files are, and these files are used in the next steps of the work file process. But you'll notice that from this directory here, we've got all of our markets being assessed across all of our systems and all of the optimizations possible for the optimization run. This effectively is a massive database which will be used for our later workflow processes in referring to. So we should have our ATS24 directory, which is now basically got nothing in it. We should have our system files, which has our stage 1 files processed in there, and we've got our symbol list, which was the symbol list generated from the prior workflow process. So that's what we should expect when we come back to our computers after this stage 1 process has been completed. It is a lengthy exercise. Let's get on to some troubleshooting. Let's say that everything looks good apart from a few files that we notice that there are visible errors in it. For instance, we don't have 8,835 rows for the Donkian for a particular run based on the number of optimizations we had. How do we do this? Well, probably the easiest way for the beginner is simply to delete all of these system directories here, delete them and the ATS24 directory and start the process all again. But it's going to take you 2 days. But for more advanced users, what they can do is they can identify which was the problem system, which was the problem market, and they could run a small test. So what I would do is I would highlight all of these files here and just archive them. So I would create a folder called archive, and I would simply transfer all of these into this archive folder. Then what I would do is I'd say, I want to run this only on one market and one system that were the problematic markets. So I would select my symbol list. I'd just copy that from the archive. I'd now place that into my tester directory. That's been copied to my tester directory. And now I'd adjust that symbol list to only look at the problematic symbol. Let's say it was GBP New Zealand. I'd go delete, and I'd delete all of these symbols here, delete. So I've only got one symbol to rerun on my workflow process. So now I'd save this file, go File, Save As, Browse. I want to overwrite that file there, go Save, Yes. Now it's overwritten it and I close it. So now the symbol list has been restricted to one symbol. I want to rerun that process on. I then, for instance, if it was a Donkian process, I'd just select Donkian to run for this particular process, and I would generate the output file, the CSV output file. Then I would copy the results of that file and I would place it over the files in my archive that were the problematic files. Hope you understand that. That's more for the advanced user, but that's a way you don't have to go through the entire process again that takes 2 days to fix some of the problems in your files. As you get more familiar with this process, you'll come to grips with some of the workarounds you can do to make this process easier. So that's in a nutshell all we do for this stage 1 process. Once we've set up all of the parameters, we've run the data mining, really it's the computer that's doing all the work. It's hands off for us. We can go and do other stuff for the next few days and then come back, and then the process should be complete and it should have run through the entire process. So that now we're ready to go on to the next stage of the process. So hope you enjoyed this one. See you again shortly for the next step of the process. Bye-bye.